Well, hello everyone. It's nice to be back
I like
on
it.
this week's episode. We are going to be interviewing Amelia, our host as guest for the week. And the title of this week's episode is The Start of Something Big, because Amelia's going to tell us all about her new adventures. And I have dogs barking in the back, so
I love it.
I'm going to let somebody else start off with, before we dive into Amelia's world, let's start off with what cool networking thing did you do this week? So maybe, I don't know, Amelia, you pick someone to go first.
Okay. Since you're dealing with your dog, I'll pick Steven, because I think I picked on Taylor last week to go first. And of course you froze. No.
So of course he froze. All right, we're just having technical difficulties and dog difficulties. Go ahead, Steven.
All right. I think you're back, Steven.
Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, so yeah, last week was an interesting one. We actually had a virtual networking session that was between the Boston area and Florida. But as you can imagine, on Monday there weren't really a lot of people from Florida dialing in, so it was really just a Boston session. Anyways, really interesting. That was with the AAMC group. Then I think I mentioned last time, had a 3-day counselor salesperson training. And so that was with Bob Davis from Newview. It was really good. And so I actually posted something today around like a wine connection, which of course resonated with me. But it was just a really good training. Highly recommend for anybody in BD sales type roles. And it really kind of shifts the paradigm as far as how you think about that. So again, happy to share that information. He did a great job, and really the materials were on point. And I've done quite a few different sales trainings and other trainings in the past, so I was impressed. And then after that, actually after the 3rd day of training, because I'm a glutton for punishment, went to Gloucester, and there was a evening event basically for the North Shore Movers and Shakers or something like that. Great event. I actually worked with Commonwealth Financial Group and did a wine blending session giveaway. And so a lot of fun, great people, and really just a cool spot at the cut. So it was a fun week last night. Pretty grueling, as 3 days of training, as everybody knows, it's still training. But it really made the best of it and had a great time. So I guess I will hand it over to Taylor.
Busy bee last week, Stephen, per usual. That sounds like a very fun week, though. Also, Gloucester is one of my favorite towns to spend a weekend in. It's beautiful. Last week was a little bit light. Had a lot of in-persons in traveling people's offices, which I try to do at least monthly/quarterly, depending on availability. But had a really cool event at Ropes and Gray last Wednesday. First time in their office. The view is immaculate in the Pro. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But it was a Arupa and Crew combined event, and it was all about DEI. Again, women specifically in construction and real estate, but how to utilize resources, strategy long-term, recruiting, management. And so it was incorporating more than just, women necessarily, but DEI in total. And then we had some amazing speakers being able to talk about, from Bullfinch and several others, to just talk about their, how they got into the industry, and then, positives and then also challenges throughout their tenure, which I personally love. I think I've mentioned this before, but a panelist type of networking event. It was about 45 minutes to begin with, and got snacks and chit chat. But then it was a good, 45 minutes of information. And you really get to know someone. It inspires conversation after. Me and several other women who I've gotten to know throughout the year, we continued the conversation there, and they were like, "You need to go now. It's after hours." Like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But that was a really nice one. And then awesome. Jeff, what about yourself?
I will jump right in. So I think I mentioned last week that I was heading off to Rochester, New York for a family wedding. But that's where I went to business school. And so was able to do a bunch of so I was actually coming in from Pennsylvania and my family was coming in from Boston. So I got there early in the day on Friday before the rest of the family got in, and was able to really fill up my calendar with a bunch of meetings. Met with a guy I went to business school with. We had some great conversations. Met with the university folks, and had some really interesting conversations about things that we might do with my book. And then I had a networking lunch with this guy that I met just on the internet, just sort of on LinkedIn. Like, he was following my articles, and it turned out we had all these things in common. Like, I had worked with his wife. He knew some guy that I went to business school with, and he was like the childhood best friend of my former boss. So it just turned out just all these random links. So we ended up having lunch and had a really good conversation. And the funny thing was, I was telling him a little bit about some of the stuff I was telling you all about last week. And I said something about how, the tough thing sometimes in the BD world is that, especially with technical products, is that the sales folks don't necessarily have the knowledge that the technical folks have. And so that was one of the things that some of the tools that we were developing were designed to address, is how do you get sort of that knowledge in the hands of all the people who doing that are trying to sell this stuff. And he was like, am I being punked? Like, this is literally the problem I have right now. So anyway, it was really fun. And I would say, just, sort of my networking tip is, like, whenever you're traveling, use all that free time that you have to meet up with people that in person that you otherwise don't get to see live. It's awesome. So, but I will pass it over to Amelia. Before we dive into questions, what was your networking win this?
Yeah. So last week was fun. I went to a couple events. I think my favorite, I had mentioned it on the last podcast. I was wrong. It was not called the Foundry. It was at the Foundry in Cambridge. This is what happens when
Great
I
location.
my calendar before I jump on to a call. But basically, it was called Founders Live, and it was a live pitch. So it started off with some networking, and then there's about 5-6 different really early stage startups, either pre-seed already, maybe had some angel funding, but looking for more funding. The idea of this event was, at the end, we all voted for our favorite pitch, and then the winner will move on. And this is actually a national competition. So it was really cool. The guy who won, I had actually spoken with earlier in the night. Really, really smart. They're creating actually basically COVID at home tests, but for Lyme disease. So the idea will be, if you find a tick on yourself, you'll be able to test the tick and then know whether or not you have, or if it's positive for Lyme. I had a great conversation with him because I ride horses. So the first thing I said was like, oh my God, are you going to offer this to the horse world? Because, like, this is something very much needed. Like, anytime a horse is like intermittently off on its foot or something, it's like, I feel like half the time it's Lyme disease. And so having a test like this would be incredibly helpful. And I actually made some introductions to a couple friends of mine who manage farms to him, and hopefully we'll see where that goes. So I was just excited to help someone, but also learn about a really interesting product that I think hopefully we'll see on the market relatively soon. The product's really cool, and he got a lot of attention at the event. So I'm excited to kind of see where the product goes and where the company goes as well.
It's amazing. I think I see a Wicked Connected pitch night in our future. I think we're gonna have to do that.
Would be cool. We should do that.
It would be. We'll definitely have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm dying to
I like
hear.
it.
So, Amelia, I'm dying to hear you just started a new job. You're like, what, the second week now? Third
Yeah.
week?
So technically today is a holiday. So tomorrow is my start of the week, but yeah, tomorrow will be the day 1 of week 3. So it's been a lot of drinking from the fire hose. What's really exciting is they launched a whole new process, a sales platform and training program. So I'm the first official person to go through their revamped program, and I'm working through a lot of the training. But as I go through it, I have meetings with my manager and just kind of come back and forth and say, hey, like, I would have actually liked more work this week, which I don't know if that's me being an overachiever or me just like liking a lot of information thrown at me all at once. So it's been really great so far, just learning about the business. I think the hardest thing for me is like just learning the product. That's the thing that I'm going to have to work on the most. Accounting is something that I have experience in, but I'm not necessarily, I'm no means an expert in it. I don't think I ever will be, but it is something that, just the terminology and getting used to kind of understanding the basics of how things flow. That way I can hold a more intelligible conversation about it. That's going to be the part that I've been focusing on. So I'm looking at my desk and I have all these flashcards right now of like terminology to remember.
You need like an AI agent that knows all the stuff going on in your company.
I know. Oh no, and like that's part of it is just like learning it. But I think it's exciting because in my past role, I was selling outsourced HR. Now we're outsourced accounting and bookkeeping at a very high level and watering down kind of what we do. But that's in 5 words. That's what we do. And a lot of what we do and how we help businesses compared to my previous company is so similar. And basically, HR or accounting, a lot of these functions at early stage businesses fall on the founders or a CEO, maybe a CFO. But at that time, if they aren't the CFO, maybe they aren't really great at accounting or it's not something they want to focus on. So they really need that support. So giving them that support. And then as they grow, a lot of businesses find themselves in the spot where maybe the CFO has time to do some of it, but doesn't have time to do all of it. But it also doesn't make sense to bring on a full-time person. Right. So what do we do here? And that's where outsourcing really comes in, is we can be as simple as alleviating some of the workload to also being a full-blown outsourced accounting department, depending on the scale of the business. And that's where we work with them day in and day out to understand where they are, and we can scale up or scale down depending on what point of the business they're in.
So I'm dying to hear. I'm going to jump in because I have all kinds of questions. Just jump in, Taylor and Stephen, if you have stuff. But I know that there's a great networking story behind how you got this job. So
yes,
kick it off.
Yes, this is like, I think, kind of the coolest thing about networking, and I tell people all the time, like, especially in a business development role, I think we are kind of forced to network as part of the job description. But I was told early on too, like, this is probably a year into networking, I had a connection of mine say, networking isn't just for your business, it's for yourself too. Like, and you'll see. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I was like, okay, sure. And now I literally find myself telling people, if you're not, like, do it once a week, just because the more people you know, that's really going to how you grow your career. So how I got into supporting strategies at my new role, I had actually met my new manager, Hayden. She's awesome. I hope we have her on the podcast one day soon. I had met her probably about 2 years ago at an FEI event. Briefly talked. We didn't stay in a ton of contact, but as I grew at Insperity, I was actually finding myself referring deals every once in a while to supporting strategies, because naturally, when you have a conversation with a small business owner about outsourced HR, other needs are uncovered. And so when that outsourced accounting came up, or, a need for maybe a bookkeeper or a little bit more extra help on the financial side, supporting strategies was always a really easy place to point, hey, go talk to these guys. But I didn't have actually a really good connection there. So fast forward, probably this past spring, I was invited to an event that Hayden is a co-sponsor of. So we connected again. We were chatting. I reached out to her afterwards on LinkedIn, was like, hey, I'd love to grab lunch, because like, we obviously are selling to the same types of businesses. I've referred you deals before, or referred your company deals before. I want to understand more about the business, because I want to be able to help my clients better and send you better referrals. So how do I do that? So we get lunch, and as we're talking, she kind of just drops it on me. She's like, hey, so actually, like, if you want to work with supporting strategies from Insperity, that's fine, but I'm actually hiring for a new role. I need help in this area. I've been the only person for 1.5 years now, and I just can't even get to all the stuff I want to get to. And I'm looking for somebody to join my team. The more we started talking, it just made perfect sense. And now here I am. So it's really exciting that, like, especially when we hear about how hard the job market is, coming from the HR world, that's something we talked about day in and day out, is just how many roles are open. Like, I have friends, I'm not kidding, who have gone through like 10 or 15 different interviews at different companies, and each company is like 7 interviews, and then they don't get the position. So when you understand that landscape of the network of just the employment world, and here I am just being I know I didn't get handed it, but it does feel like that in some ways. Like, I didn't even have to apply, I was approached. To me, that's just the power of networking, and it's like the most exciting aspect of it as well. Like, not only do you get to meet cool people, but you get amazing opportunities that you just wouldn't get by just sitting on your computer going through LinkedIn, for example.
You're putting yourself out there, and that's such a win, because I think there's a couple of wins in what you just mentioned. One obviously being a new gig, which, to your point, I mean, it was Amelia's brand that got her engaged, being like, I need this woman on my team. I've seen what she's done. And that's again, the powerful thing of networking, but then
Yes.
also just taking control of the situation. I mean, I'm sure everyone has faced a layoff or something similar at some point, COVID or outside of it, it is a semi-common thing and it's stressful, but there's one thing of shooting out, it's kind of like emailing people with a cold email. If they don't know who you are or see a picture or anything like that, it's hard to know the valuable asset that you could be. So you did the absolute right thing. And then just to kick it back for a second, my favorite, and we discussed this, I think, in our first or second episode,
Oh, yeah.
but you mentioned I was just giving to them, right? Like, we were dealing with the same clients. I want to help my clients. So, they're asking for outsource accounting. I'm going to send them over there, like right there. And then it's just great to have a network, because whether you're in sales, no matter what type of role you're in, if you're dealing with an internal or external client, you want to be able to provide them with tools and resources just for that relationship building. So you're giving without taking, which is just so sales 101. But then second of all, you're able to make the connection, and that's such an incredible story, full circle.
Yeah, it really, like, it feels like a gift. Like, I know, like, obviously I did a lot of work on my own and just in my career to get the role, but just, I'm like, I really do feel so lucky, and that's what I just am most excited about.
Yeah, and I'll sort of jump in. I think, oh, sorry, Stephen, you go ahead, because I've been monopolized.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, on the accounting and finance side, if you have questions there, you do know a guy, right? So
yeah, I know.
I say, on that note, Amelia, I'm in accounting too, and like, it's exactly the flashcards. You get used to that.
Well, I was going to say, though, just picking up on a couple of things. One, the LinkedIn thing. I think at this point, if a job is on LinkedIn, you are already too late. I mean, it's done.
That's fair.
That's true.
You'll see jobs that'll like post, and like 800 people have lined up, already, within a day. And I think the real problem with that is, if you rely on LinkedIn to get, sort of the old news, you won't get a job, not because you're not good enough. You may be perfectly fine. It's just that 800, I mean, I'm going to weed them all out. And the easiest way to weed them out is to go, well, does anybody know any of these people? And if the answer is no, then you're sort of
AI, and you don't have a certain keyword on your resume. I don't think people understand that. A lot are sifted out. And I actually, just to, put this conversation very similar to Amelia, I had a friend that moved to New York City. She was looking for a new gig. She needed something very quickly, one of those situations. And I told her, I was like, just look up free networking events in your area. You have no idea who you're going to meet. Like, if you're looking in finance, do it in that way. But making the connections, I mean, I get a list of job openings sent to me just as part of an event list. And any friends or people in my network that are looking for anything in the construction real estate side, I send to them, because I'm like, hey, if you're interested, let me know. I can put you in front of the person.
Exactly.
I think that's great. But Amelia, I had a question for you. So you were at Insperity for a long time. You're going into this new role. How was, again, starting something new? You said before, like, you're so excited to start fresh, building everything out, but like, how do you, perspective and then tools wise, go into this? I know you have your flashcards, but
Yeah,
what are some
that's me
strategies?
studying.
Like what kind of strategies are you utilizing? And then are you utilizing like your network or internal network for this as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what's exciting to me is that the job right now is very similar to the job that I previously had in terms of the actual goal and the outcomes that I'm looking for. Getting out there, but I think I have more flexibility now in terms of just always being from home, so I can kind of mold my calendar around the different networking events I'm attending. Supporting Strategies has a very different sales prospect and kind of process that I think I've than any other company I've been in that they don't necessarily believe in the traditional cold calling and cold emailing. They believe very much in relationship based selling, which I think in this market, as somebody who, has done the cold calling, has done the cold emailing, like I was doing that at Insperity, and most of my deals came from people that I was referred into. And it just, shout out to Sean Moore here. He's a sales acceleration guy. So if people are looking for outsourced sales, the sales acceleration guys are good. But he told me this years ago, and it's basically like, if you're cold calling, the chance that you're going to get a close is like 5% of a chance, like from a cold call to actually closing a deal. If you get a referral from a client, so just a client to client where you're not quite, hey, we use this person, it goes up to like 30-40%. But if it's like a trusted advisor who understands the business, understands the needs, and understands your product on top of that, and they refer you in, the chances of that deal becoming a client is like 80%. And I'm sure those numbers vary between industry, et cetera. But I think that just, it's proof in the pudding. So it's much more of a longer term goal, but I honestly appreciate it because it's more about building relationships and maintaining the contact with people as well. And really having the freedom to give before you get versus feeling like there's pressure to get as well. And in this situation, it's like, I know that it's such a good product that if I just continue to build relationships, the rest is just going to come, because everybody needs some sort of accounting and bookkeeping, whether or not you're doing it in-house or out of house. But most of the time, people want to outsource at least part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I go ahead, Stephen, were you going to jump in? I keep jumping in over you, so no.
I was going to say completely agree. No, I completely agree, and I think that
yeah.
No, completely agree, and I think that's fascinating. Obviously, it works very well with exactly what you've done. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Amelia, to what you're talking about. Oh yeah, thanks. I think Amelia, just, you were talking about that, that whole thing about cold versus, sort of warm versus like, trusted and so forth. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And I think that fundamentally, deep down at its core, all of marketing and business development is all about building trust. Totally. And so, if you start off with, cold to sale is actually, unless there's something else going on out in the environment, like you've got some marketing or people know that you sell Coca-Cola and they trust Coca-Cola, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's the brand recognition aspect of it for sure.
But if that doesn't exist, cold to sale is it's, if you think about it, it's a very unlikely thing, right? Like why would, especially if you're talking about something that's like more than like $5, right? I mean, I have a hard enough time getting people to buy my, my $15 book, right? Because they don't know, they've never heard of it, whatever and so what the big thing with book marketing is you got to get as many reviews as possible. What's that about? It's about building trust, right? And so, I think this is where, all of that relationship building, because in the end of the day, what you're really trying to do with the networking is build warm connections for the future. So that when somebody does need you. So I think I think it's a really important thing, to know is like cold to sale. I don't know. This is not a super hopeful.
Yeah, it works. I think there's certain industries and platforms where it totally makes sense. I think in the small business world, and when you're trying to sell to kind of the C-suite executive type, that's where the relationship really becomes a lot more helpful. That's just at least what I've noticed.
And in the accounting world too. When it comes to people's finances, individual or business, accounting is one of the top trusted professions. So,
exactly.
you know, especially now, you having that mindset of relationship building, adding value, the in-person lunches, coffees, like all of that, it just goes such a long way. And I was going to ask this, like, what is your, for networking's sake, you know, being more pointed to this new position, has it been, and I know it's just going into the third week here, but has there been type of a brainstorm or narrative of how you're going to go about it? I know it's semi-similar, but you know, I know you're kind of building this out with your boss. So is it, you know, taking some virtual meetings, or is it primarily like reaching out, utilizing your network, doing the in-persons, events? You know, what is your forecast for that?
It's a little bit of everything, actually. So I've personally, like, I have clients that I've talked to already and everything. Like, of course, like the day I left Insperity, and 3 different clients reach out with questions, and I had to be like, sorry, like, I don't, like, this is what you have to do, but I can't, like, email this person instead. Like, I literally just, I don't have my email anymore. I'm sorry, I can't help you. They're like, oh, I'm so excited to kind of follow up with you and see what you're doing. I personally want to keep those connections for a little bit later down the road, because I don't know if anyone else relates to this. When you're newer to a product, I want to revisit my connections and kind of handle that process on my own, instead of bringing someone else in to kind of keep my same credibility of like, hey, like, I'm new. Here's like my manager who's going to run the call for me right now. I'd like to be able to get up and running to the point where I can do that myself, and then kind of bring her in later on, at least with the people that I have really strong relationships already. That being said, I'm still going to a lot of the same networking events, but I'm also revisiting a lot of events. And that's when I'm having these networking, whether it's a breakfast or a virtual meeting. I always ask people, hey, do you want lunch? Do you want coffee? Or do you want to just do something virtual? What makes most sense for you? Because some people, like, they hate virtual, but sometimes people are so busy that getting something on the calendar for a lunch or a coffee might be impossible to do, or it's like we're gonna have to wait a month, and that kind of stinks. Or maybe we live, you know, one of my good connections, so kind of going back to that, revisiting different networking groups. One of the events I went to last week was up in New Hampshire with a woman I worked with who's outsourced HR. So when when Insperity wasn't a good fit for a client, I often would refer them to either this, depending on what they needed. I have a couple different people, but she was one of the people I would refer out to. So reconnecting with her as well. So it kind of just depends, I think, on figuring out what makes the most sense. Because I think there's some events that are more service provider focused, and those are where you're going to get maybe good referral partners. Probably not going to expect to get a good client out of it, but I'm going to meet 5 or 6 people who I want to have lunch with. But they might live an hour away, so we're just going to meet on Zoom and figure it out that way. But then there's other events where I think they're more kind of CEO founder focused, and that's where I'm going to meet more client type. So it's just knowing what the events are and how to follow up that way. And then I think for me, it's just exciting going back through events, because I might not have had a lot of success getting leads or people to refer me business with Insperity at those, but this is a different product and a different need set. So I think going back and revisiting groups that maybe I didn't get a ton of benefit out of before, that's what I'm excited about too, and kind of seeing the difference in the market depending on the product that I'm representing.
Makes sense. And I know, Amelia, you're super new to this, right? But just thinking about like your ideal candidate or client profile, right? What does that look like? You know, adding up to revenues, industries, those sort of things. Like what is a good referral?
Yeah. So we're pretty industry agnostic, which is really nice. I'm personally focused more on the innovation side, so more startup, biotech. That being said, we have manufacturing, we have construction companies. Really, we're focused on businesses that are growing or have a need for accounting from some regards. Generally, pre-revenue is a little difficult, because obviously if you're investing in something, you need money. So if they're pre-revenue, generally, if they have some sort of funding, that's great as well. Just kind of understanding where they're at in their business. So for example, if you're a startup, you just got funding and it's just you and you're a founder, one of the first 5 things you're going to do is probably get some sort of accounting function. That's a fantastic client. But also if they are looking to kind of reorg their accounting, if they're maybe looking for extra help, anybody who has accounting that values outsourcing, that's the way I'm looking at it right now. And then obviously there's time, budget, need, etc.
So before we do our sort of lightning round to close off, it has been another half an hour. I know it goes.
I know. We can't keep going to an hour, even though I love talking.
So it's awesome though. It's so much fun to always have a conversation that could keep going forever. But what if people were trying to reach you, Amelia, and they're interested in how can they connect with you?
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Amelia Haru Cummins. That's my LinkedIn. I think there's an MBA in there somewhere as well. Sometimes I don't remember what I put as I changed it recently. So I'm like, do I still have it? I don't know. You can reach out to me at Supporting Strategies. It's Haru at supportingstrategies.com. My email's also listed on LinkedIn. Reach out to us in the DMs of Wicked Connected if you're really at a loss. But I think I'm pretty easily findable on LinkedIn. So just hit me up on LinkedIn and we can figure it out.
Awesome. Well, this was awesome. Really cool to hear, Amelia, about
thank you.
And it is definitely, I think, the start of something big. So
I'm really excited. I hope so.
Great.
I hope I know so. I'm gonna.
So it's you're gonna manifest it into existence.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know what this whole hope is. No, it's just gonna be awesome.
But before we sort of finish up, really quick lightning round of what cool networking things are each of you doing next week? Maybe Amelia, we'll just start with you. What's on your?
Absolutely. So I don't have anything today because obviously it's technically a holiday. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, everyone. But on Wednesday, I'm excited. I might be going to the FEI event, but I'll let you guys talk about that. I don't want to spoil anything. But I am going to a breakfast being hosted by Metro West Life Sciences Network. I know that's a little bit of a mouthful. It's out in the Framingham area, and it's basically an ecosystem of biotech people. So whether or not they're vendors, actual bio people who sell to biotech, etc. This is a new series that they're doing, and it's basically speed networking, but they have each room, they have like a separate topic. So you get to go and talk to somebody who's specialized in whatever topic and learn a little bit about that and meet everybody in kind of a smaller sense. But then also afterwards, kind of grab coffee and a bagel and talk to everyone afterwards there. And then on Thursday, I also have an event, Third Thursday, which is actually where I met my manager, my boss, and how I actually got the job. So she's a co-host of that. So obviously I'll be attending to support her and supporting strategies. And yeah, so maybe I'll see you on Wednesday at FEI, but I'll let Taylor kind of dig into that. And sorry for the spoilers.
Also, I love the speed dating aspect of networking events. I've been to two like in the past 6 months. And at first I was like, is it gonna be that impactful? It is. It really it's very different, but being able to say a quick hello on a specific topic to that many people and then
totally
pick and choose kind of afterwards, like, oh, we should reconnect or set coffee.
Yeah.
I really do like them. They can be really impactful, which is nice. But I'll go next since you mentioned the FEI. It's a short week for me. I have a wedding going up to northern Vermont, nice 4-hour drive. But before that, I am going to the FEI event on ESG Insights. So it's going to be a ton of finance professionals, everything sustainability, energy efficiency. And so it's actually my first FEI event. I have a lot of connects that are going there, and it's a whiskey tasting, so it should be fun. But as far as the speakers go, super insightful. Again, I love a networking speaker combo. I love learning things, so it should be good. But I will talk about the feedback next week.
Yes, they always have great events. You're gonna have so much fun, and we'll see. I'm hoping I'll be able to go because that one's one that I've the panel's supposed to be really
also connections. I mean, between you both, and then I have other connections. But one of my good buddies is a board member, and he was able to get me a free spot. So again, connections and networking. Yeah. Sometimes they give you, an opportunity to go somewhere as well. Stephen, I'll pass it to you.
Stephen.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting week. So the two
You're good.
second
Just
lag.
keep talking. I think you.
Yeah, so it will be a busy week. Yeah, so it's going to be a busy week as well. So today, actually, there is a for others who are interested in getting involved in the wine thing like me, there's actually a meeting around that this evening. So I'm inviting a couple of my friends who are in like the event planning and wedding planning space. Beyond that, there is a Private Directors Association strategic happy hour. That's tomorrow. Wednesday is a dinner with SVB, which goes back to my predecessor firm days. So really keeping that up. And SVB is actually pretty heavily involved in the wine industry. That's one of their key focus areas. So really kind of cool to keep for that angle of it as well. Then Thursday is I'd otherwise be going to Third Thursday as well, Amelia. Those are great events. But Thursday I'll be going to a Good Shepherd gala event. And then Friday, yeah, it looks like, or getting into the weekend, that's going to be homecoming for my alma mater in Western Mass. So definitely going to be a busy week as well, but fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will bring it home with just a couple things. So I was traveling a lot last week, and I'm traveling a lot this week. But like I said about Rochester, you have to take advantage of being somewhere. So it turns out that I'm going to be in Greenville, South Carolina, working with a company doing a training on managing up. Which is going to be fun and cool, and I think really valuable. But the woman who introduced me to the company that I'm doing this with also lives in Greenville, and so I'm going to have coffee with her. And so this is sort of like a year ago she made this connection, and here we are. It's sort of come to
awesome.
So that was really cool. And then have a couple of other just sort of one-on-one things going on. But the other cool thing I think is, so a friend that I met through my brother connected me with Predict. You all knew Predictive Index. It's like sort of one of those, sort of like Myers-Briggs, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a personality assessment type thing.
Yeah, so friend that I met through my brother, you sort of met through networking. She works there, and she got me on their. I am their book club book for the month of October, and also she connected me with their. The guy who does their podcast. So I'm going to be a guest on their podcast. I don't know when it will air, but I am recording that on Friday. And so super fun stuff, but all sort of building off of network stuff. So even in a week where I'm super busy and traveling, there's still, networking is still having its impact. And it's awesome. So much fun. Always cool to catch up with you all. Looking forward to next week. We didn't discuss this, but I guess, why don't I'm going to volunteer Steven and Taylor the following week.
I'm excited for Steven to tell his story.
Yeah. So we'll talk with Steven next week about all the things he's doing. And it was great chatting with you all. See you next week.
Look forward to it.
Next week. Bye.
Bye.
Great.